This wasn't an interview. This was a public execution, broadcast live and watched by millions. What was supposed to be a routine quarterback segment turned into something else entirely. Something brutal, something unforgettable. One sentence, 7 seconds of silence. A career shifted, a franchise shaken, a nation watching. If you saw it live, you already know. You witnessed a generational moment. If you missed it, buckle in, because this wasn't sports television. This was psychological warfare, and someone didn't make it out. It started like any other off-season segment. Quiet confidence, measured answers, nothing out of the ordinary. ESPN's First Take had scheduled what looked like standard fare, 2 quarterbacks from the same team, Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, seated side by side to discuss their ongoing battle for QB1 in Cleveland. Just another piece of summer content. Behind the scenes, everything seemed normal. Gabriel arrived early, reviewing talking points with his publicist. Calm and composed, Sanders entered 15 minutes before airtime, alone, headphones in, focused. There was no visible tension, no trash talk, just 2 professionals prepping for what should have been a polite discussion. Producers described the pre-show vibe as relaxed. Smiles exchanged, cameras tested, microphones clipped on. Nothing hinted at what was coming. But retrospect reveals the cracks. Sanders wasn't just calm, he was ready. Not media-trained ready, war room ready. While Gabriel practiced diplomacy, Sanders was memorizing statistics. While Gabriel prepped for a conversation, Sanders prepped for a confrontation. And once the cameras went live, it took less than 3 minutes for the temperature to drop. Because what followed wasn't an interview, it was an ambush. The storm hadn't arrived yet, but you could feel the wind shift. The segment began exactly as expected. Host Molly Karam lobbed a diplomatic question about training camp progress. Gabriel answered first, textbook quarterback speak. He spoke about team chemistry, understanding the offense, building timing with receivers. Polished, practiced, predictable. Then came Sanders. He paused, looked directly into the camera, and with surgical calm, said, "I've been perfect in 3 practices, 0 incompletions, over 20 touchdowns. The stats speak louder than rhetoric." The room froze. Stephen A. Smith shifted in his chair. Shannon Sharpe leaned forward. Producers held their breath. Gabriel tried to recover, brushing off practice stats as meaningless without game performance. Safe. Controlled. Then Sanders dropped the line that detonated everything. "If practice doesn't matter, why are you still QB2? 7 seconds of silence followed. Not the awkward kind, the devastating kind. Gabriel's jaw slackened. His eyes darted. There was no comeback. Stephen A. dropped his notes. Shannon Sharpe whispered, "Young man just ended this competition on national television." What began as a balanced segment had become a coronation. Sanders didn't shout. He didn't taunt. He let the numbers and the silence do the work. That wasn't an answer. It was an execution. The impact was immediate and unrelenting. Gabriel, stunned and silent, removed his mic during the next commercial break and exited the set without saying a word. No handshake, no pleasantries, just disappearance. Sanders, by contrast, remained seated, casually sipping water and checking his phone. Unfazed, composed, in total control. Inside ESPN, chaos erupted. Executives debated whether to even air the segment unedited. Ultimately, they did. The numbers were too good. Within hours, it became the highest-rated First Take episode in months. Social media exploded. Sanders' quote, "Why are you still QB2?" trended globally within minutes. Memes flooded timelines. Analysts, players, even non-sports media weighed in. But the real aftershock hit Cleveland. The Browns' coaching staff was livid. A segment meant to showcase unity had turned into psychological bloodshed. A team meeting was called. Damage control began. But internally, fractures had already formed. Veterans whispered. Younger players celebrated. And the quarterback room? Irreversibly split. Ownership was reportedly thrilled. Viral attention, brand exposure. But for the men in the locker room, the reality was clear. This was no longer a simple competition. Sanders had seized control, not by waiting for a coach's decision, but by forcing one on live television. What Sanders pulled off wasn't just a bold statement. It was a masterclass in modern competition. Gone are the days when players waited patiently behind the curtain for their shot. Sanders didn't wait. He didn't ask for permission. He rewrote the playbook, using the media as his arena and facts as his weapons. No insults, no theatrics, just raw performance metrics, perfectly timed and ruthlessly delivered. For decades, NFL quarterback battles played out in private, quiet evaluations, coach-speak diplomacy, depth chart slow dances. Sanders turned that script inside out. His approach wasn't just aggressive, it was strategic. From the camera angle he chose to the deliberate pause before his kill shot, every detail was calculated. He didn't just win a debate, he executed a paradigm shift. Now, teams across the league are reevaluating media policies. PR departments are revising joint interview protocols. And young quarterbacks? They're taking notes. Because what happened on that ESPN set wasn't a fluke. It was a warning shot to the old guard. Sanders proved that today's athletes don't just compete on the field. They compete in narratives, in perception. And in that new arena, he's already 2 steps ahead. While Sanders emerged as the new face of fearless competition, the fallout for Dillon Gabriel was immediate and brutal. But what began as a standard media hit turned into a psychological ambush. Gabriel, prepared for polite soundbites and generic camaraderie, was blindsided by Sanders' precision strike. His silence, the 7-second pause that followed the now infamous "Why are you still QB2?" line, became the defining moment of his public persona. Not as a competitor, but as a casualty. The damage wasn't just reputational. Sources close to the Browns' locker room described a noticeable shift. Teammates growing quiet around Gabriel. Veterans concerned about the optics of siding with a dethroned contender. And offensive linemen reportedly questioning who they should be protecting come week 1. Endorsement deals stalled. Media narratives shifted. Confidence, the intangible fuel of any quarterback, visibly eroded. Gabriel wasn't outplayed on the field. He was outmaneuvered in full view of millions. And in the era of viral moments and instant judgment, that might be even worse. For him to recover will require more than just solid play. It'll take rebuilding trust, confidence, and presence from ground zero. And in the NFL, time for that kind of reconstruction is rarely afforded. In the aftermath of the broadcast, the Cleveland Browns organization found itself thrust into the national spotlight. Not for Super Bowl aspirations, but for a quarterback controversy that exploded on live television. Internally, chaos reigned. Head coach Kevin Stefanski reportedly called an emergency team meeting within hours. The locker room, once unified under a team-first mantra, fractured. Position groups began choosing sides, with younger players praising Sanders' assertiveness, while veterans expressed concern over the breach of unwritten team protocols. Offensive linemen privately questioned the logic of protecting a backup who'd been humiliated on national TV. Receivers worried about optics and brands. The front office was divided. Coaches fumed over Sanders' breach of decorum. But ownership? Reportedly thrilled. The viral moment had catapulted the Browns into headlines during an otherwise dull offseason, boosting national interest, social media engagement, and jersey sales. Publicly, the Browns said nothing. No statements, no denials, no damage control. Their silence only amplified the moment's power. Behind the scenes, though, the organization faced a painful truth. The quarterback competition had been settled in a way no one expected. Not by gameplay, but by dominance in the media arena. And there was no putting that genie back in the bottle. What transpired on ESPN wasn't just a moment. It was a message, a declaration that the rules of quarterback competition, and perhaps sports professionalism at large, had changed. No longer would diplomacy and deference define the battle for starting roles. In this new era, dominance isn't just displayed on the field. It's asserted on camera, in interviews, and across timelines. Shedeur Sanders didn't merely outperform Dillon Gabriel. He redefined how athletes compete in the modern age, armed with facts, prepared like a trial attorney, and completely fluent in the language of social media and optics. Sanders weaponized truth and confidence to dismantle a peer without raising his voice or breaking protocol. It wasn't disrespect. It was strategy, and it worked. Now, every franchise is taking notes. Media teams are rewriting training protocols. PR departments are reconsidering joint appearances. Young athletes, particularly quarterbacks, are studying Sanders' approach like game tape, understanding that narrative control is now a competitive skill. The message is clear. Performance extends beyond the playbook. In this era, winning the press room can be just as crucial as winning the huddle. And for every rising athlete, the question now becomes, are you ready to own the moment or be owned by it? Moments like the one on ESPN don't just fade away. They echo through time, shaping careers and redefining legacies. Shedeur Sanders' bold display of confidence wasn't just a snapshot of a single day. It was a turning point that will influence how athletes approach competition and media interaction for years to come. The impact goes beyond the scoreboard or highlight reels. This moment redefines leadership in sports, emphasizing mental sharpness and media savvy as key components of success. For coaches, it signals a new challenge: how to manage players who are as skilled in communication as they are in their physical abilities. For young athletes watching, Sanders' example is a blueprint for taking control of their narrative, their brand, and ultimately, their destiny. It's a reminder that talent alone isn't enough. The way you present yourself, handle pressure, and respond to competition can elevate or undermine your career. In the end, this episode on ESPN is more than a contest between two quarterbacks. It's a cultural milestone. It marks the moment when the game expanded beyond the field, forever blending athleticism with personality, confidence with strategy, and competition with storytelling. The showdown on ESPN between Shedeur Sanders and Caleb Williams was more than just a game. It was a defining moment in modern sports culture. It showcased how confidence, strategy, and charisma can be just as important as raw talent. From the calm before the storm to the electric tension on the field, every second contributed to a narrative that will be remembered for years. This moment challenged traditional ideas of leadership and competition, pushing athletes to not only excel in their craft, but also master the art of presence and influence. It proved that in today's sports world, the story behind the game is just as powerful as the plays themselves. As fans and future athletes look back, they will see how this clash set a new standard, one where mental agility, boldness, and media savvy combine to create a legacy that extends far beyond the final whistle. In the end, the ESPN showdown wasn't just a contest, it was a glimpse into the future of sports.